Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live with my red card here at the Target Center in downtown Minneapolis. The scoreboard is on the floor right now. Here at Big Ten Basketball Media Days. It would have to be one continuous 48-hour day for it to be Media Day. It's Media Days. Half the league yesterday, half the league today. So I've been calling it Big Ten Basketball Media Day. Not accurate. It's Big Ten Basketball Media Days. So today was Purdue. Obviously, Matt Painter and Zach Edey came up here, and for some reason, I flew hundreds of miles and spent all sorts of Allen's money to come up here to talk to two people who are like a mile from my house, who I can interview probably just about whenever, with a couple days' notice. But here we are. This is, I guess, your first wrap video of the 2022-2023 Purdue basketball season. And there was much rejoicing. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your promotional considerations, as always. We very much appreciate it. I don't really know what to talk about here today. It was just typical podium time, and then Matt Painter talked for 30 minutes. Not sure he said anything we haven't heard yet, except for all the Chris Murray questions he was asked because of the proximity here to the Iowa media, as opposed to the majority of the Big Ten basketball media corps. But nevertheless, here we are. I guess I'll just talk about Purdue's season, I guess. It's kind of fitting that, Zach Edey was the only guy Purdue brought here. Because, if you had to pick a second one, there would be quite a conversation to have when, Mason Gillis is probably your second most proven player. A lot of your best players this year are going to be guys who, might not be established yet. A lot of your most important players are guys who were technically under Matt Painter's media guidelines for freshmen, not even eligible to speak to us yet. So it was kind of fitting it was just Edey, because Edey kind of stands alone in importance on Purdue's roster. Purdue's had some really high-gravity guys over the years who the team's been built around, guys who inextricably influence Purdue's outcomes in every game they play in. Carson Edwards was one. Obviously, Zach Edey's going to be cut from that same cloth because he's the guy that Purdue is built around offensively. Purdue's the guy who is going to be very involved from a defensive perspective because opposing offenses are going to want it that way. His improvement defensively, his productivity defensively are going to, and I just mean doing what he's supposed to do and being effective, not necessarily statistics. That's going to be a huge key to Purdue's success this year. When you're looking at a guy with his experience obviously matters quite a bit. This is Zach Edey's time. I don't know if this is going to be a matter of he's got to play X amount more minutes than he has in the past, or it's a matter of he's got to play just as many minutes, but they have to be better minutes, whatever it might be. His importance to this team cannot be overstated. That said, I've made a lot about this in the preseason here. Is I think Purdue's got some real interchangeable parts here and some real potential matchup advantages waiting to kind of percolate here with Caleb Furst and Trey Kaufman-Renn presumably coming off the bench. I think both of those guys give Purdue the ability to play a couple different ways. They give Purdue ways where they can create some offensive matchups. Purdue's always kind of been the same from an offensive approach perspective. That doesn't mean not good, not quite frankly deadly in a lot of cases. But it's always been you play through the low post, you move the ball when you get double teamed, whatever. And you make shots. As long as you make good decisions, it's a really, really winning formula when you have the personnel to do it. Now, with Furst and Kaufman-Renn, I think you have guys who can drag opposing big guys away. I think you have more dynamic elements from an offensive perspective in terms of the different things you can do, the ability to dive and slip screens and play pick and roll, but also pick and pop. And Caleb Furst has been, by every account, shooting the hell out of the ball from three-point range all preseason. If he's a guy you can count on to be a really big-time shooter, that's going to open up the entire floor for other stuff. Trey Kaufman-Renn is a really good low-post scorer. You put him and Furst next to one another. Furst stretches the defense, allows Kaufman-Renn to slip inside against a A smaller four, I think the ability to play high-low there can be a real advantage for Purdue. And it's going to be really interesting to see how all these parts kind of fit. Purdue's got a really good front court. First in Kaufman-Wren, probably, I don't know if you call them proven yet. First did a lot of really good things as a freshman. Obviously, I don't know if anybody's really looking at Purdue in the preseason and saying, oh man, Caleb First quite yet. They will be next year, but I don't know if they're quite doing that yet. But I think both of those guys have a chance to be really, really high-impact players for Purdue right away, and Purdue's front court to be really good. I've written before, I think that Purdue might be wise to kind of tether Edey and Mason Gillis together, and then sort of tether, not physically, but you know what I mean, playing together, and then play First and Kaufman-Wren next to one another as much as possible, because I think Gillis is sort of the ultimate complement to Edey, and I think that the offensive dynamics with First and Trey Kaufman-Wren, I don't know if there's a ceiling to it. I think those guys can really be dangerous together. They can be good on their own next to Edey, next to Gillis, whatever it might be. But I think together that can be a really dangerous combination for Purdue. I think that front line is going to have to carry a lot of weight because I think you've got a lot of inexperience in the backcourt, and that's always cause for trepidation for basketball coaches. Purdue loves Braden Smith. I will tell you that they love Braden Smith. They love Fletcher Lawyer, and they are counting on big things from both of those guys. But the reality remains, neither of them have played in a college basketball game before, so there's going to be some ups and downs. They're going to have to play through some mistakes, kind of things like that. You're going to have to play through the post. The good news is you have a guy, both in his stature physically and his stature as a player at this point, that can really be that load-bearing wall for your entire operation here, and that's obviously Zach Edey. So Purdue's going to go as far as Zach Edey can take them. I think that's going to take a lot of pressure off of those young guards early, let them kind of improve as they gain experience. I think Purdue's going to play through the front court, left and right. But the reality is, too, that Purdue has to get back to some of the things that they've always been at least solid at. To have the sort of season they want to have. This team's not talented enough to not take care of the basketball and to be inattentive defensively, and I think those were some of the trade-offs for having ultimate talent last year. I think this is a Purdue team that's kind of wired to get back to some of what Purdue typically always wants to be at least steady at, and I think that's non-negotiable this year because, as I mentioned before, this is not a team that's just going to out-talent a lot of people. They might overwhelm people physically at times, but I don't think they're just going to they're just not going to out-talent everyone they play. Like last year's team could, much to its detriment. I think that had things not come so easily for Purdue early in the season offensively, I think they would have been a better team when it mattered most at the end of the year. I think had they had to struggle a little bit in non-conference, before they went to Rutgers, if they weren't able to score 85 points against anyone at any time early in the season, I think that would have probably made them a little more Big Ten ready once they needed to be Big Ten ready. And I don't think you're going to have those sorts of issues with this team. That said, you're not going to have just the awesome talent that you had last year. I think guys like Ethan Morton and the two forwards I mentioned before are going to have prime opportunities to become really good players right in front of your eyes here this year. I think Brandon Newman has the opportunity of his career now. He obviously has to improve on some things that put him in the position he was in last year. We'll see if he's able to do that. Braden Smith's going to have to come along quickly. Ready or not, here he comes. Fletcher Lawyer, the same. Those guys are, if you ask me, are probably going to be all Big Ten caliber guys at some point in their careers. Asking them to be that sort of guy right away is a big ask. But I think if you can just kind of break them in gradually, do with them what Wisconsin was able to do with Chucky Hepburn, where everybody around him, carried so much responsibility, and they had enough experience to where you didn't have to ask those guys to be a whole lot more than just part of the puzzle. I think that's your ideal scenario here for Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. That being said, you need them on the floor. So if they're going to be on the floor, they have to produce. So it's going to be interesting to see how Purdue does this year. I think there's a wide range of outcomes for this whole league. We hear every year at this thing, the league's wide open, the league's wide open. The league isn't always wide open. It's just not. This year, I think people are looking at Indiana because they brought back their whole team, which I think is quite a luxury nowadays when very few people do that because of the portal and because of the transfer climate and all that stuff. I think that is a direct reflection of NIL. I think, if it weren't for NIL, Hunter Dickinson would not be here. Trace Jackson Davis would not be in the Big Ten, and things would be a lot different. Things would be even more wide open. But that being said, you do have a couple of the league's best players back from last year, and the league is still wide open. I had put Purdue probably in that top 5 right away. I see them making the NCAA tournament, that kind of thing, but it's a wide range of outcomes. If Purdue doesn't get good at the stuff they need to get good at in terms of taking care of the basketball, being attentive defensively, or if Zach Edey doesn't have the season he needs to have, if Purdue can't make shots the way they're expecting to be able to make shots, things like that, there is a wide range of outcomes here. I'd bet on a more favorable outcome before I'd bet against a favorable outcome, but this is as blank a slate, I think, as Purdue has had since probably, Carson Edwards' junior year, when everything around him was new. You saw how that turned out. Purdue won the Big Ten. Purdue, damn near went to the Final Four. I'm not saying that's predictive of what's to come this year, but I think all outcomes are on the table here, and it'll be fascinating to see how this plays out. So that's what I got from the Target Center here in Minneapolis. Brian Neubert from goldenblack.com. Thank you for reading. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And thank you to the Purdue Union Club Hotel once again for your continued support. And I'll talk to you again, I don't know when. Purdue will have its fan day scrimmage here in a couple weeks. I'll cover that like it's a game. And I'll probably have one of these after that. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Be sure to go check out our site. I have a full notebook up from this thing. All sorts of video interviews with Purdue's guys, but Raphael Davis and Robbie Hummel, too, about the Big Ten in general. Be sure to check that out, and thanks.